welcome to episode 7 of the Flame and Fiber podcast. My name is Barbara. You can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Diva S. And we have a Ravelry group for the podcast called the Flame and Fiber Podcast Ravelry group. You can find it under the groups tag. And I would like to welcome all the new people who have just found us, and to welcome back anyone who has seen the podcast before. We hit 120 subscribers, and I said last week that if we made it to 100, there would be a giveaway. So I'm going to announce a giveaway later at the end of the podcast, or towards the end of the podcast. And thank you so much for everyone who subscribed. I really appreciate it. And double thanks to everyone who introduced themselves on the welcome thread in the Ravelry group. That was so much fun to read and to get to know some of you, and I really appreciate that. It was wonderful to read, and thank you so much for letting me know a little bit about you. I'm trying to think, what was it I was going to say? I'm podcasting a day late. Normally I would tape the podcast on Mondays, but I was away yesterday, and I just got home a few hours ago, and so I'm trying to get the podcast up as early as possible, as close to my normal time. I'm not sure you guys even pay attention to things like that, and didn't even notice I wasn't here posting the podcast last night, but typically it goes up on a Monday night, and today is Tuesday. But I have a good friend who retired at the end of last year. We worked together for the 27 years that I worked at my company, and for many of those years she was my boss and supervisor, and a dear, dear friend. And she retired, and it had been my tradition to take her out for dinner on her birthday. And even though in the middle of this year she moved to Sarasota, Florida, I decided, tradition's tradition. And so I needed to take her out for her birthday. As it turns out, her birthday wasn't quite as convenient for her, so it was a little early. Her birthday's actually tomorrow. So I went for a long weekend, and I just got home today. I had a wonderful time, I've often wondered how it is to be a knitter in the South. There are a lot of people who knit, and there are a lot of podcasters who podcast. Yeah, people podcast from Texas and Mississippi, and Florida, and I've been wondering what it's like to be a knitter in the South, where it's not really that cold. And I'm in Pennsylvania, where I get a nice use of my knitted garments and scarves and cowls and shawls and things. So I went, but I knew there was a yarn shop in Sarasota because I had seen, and I don't remember who it was, someone famous, and they've had many famous people there. If you look on their Facebook page, someone famous was going to be at a yarn shop in Sarasota. So I knew there was a yarn shop. And it's called A Good Yarn Sarasota. And I'll talk about it a little bit when I get to the goodies. And we can talk about the goodies too, the whole goodies thing. But anyway, so I've been away, and but I did get some knitting done. I have good news and bad news about my knitting. So I'll do the bad news first. So the bad news is I've been working on these beautiful monkey socks, and there are a lot of good things about knitting your socks two at a time. I like it, and I don't think I'm gonna stop knitting my socks two at a time. But I have these beautiful monkey socks in this gorgeous yarn. This is the Oink Pigments yarn. See if I can grab the, apparently I can't grab it without looking. The yarn tag. Apparently I can't grab it at all. Wasn't it in here? Was I so confident I was going to be done? Oh, there it is. No, it's just hiding. So this beautiful yarn. It's 90% superwash merino, 10% nylon. Really lovely and gorgeous. And I don't know if you recall, but after I started these socks, I realized I have another skein of this and was kind of sorry I started socks. Well, I got this far. You know, I mean, so I've been knitting them on my trip because I can knit these and talk and, you know. So I got this far and I'm like, oh, let me see how much more I have to go for my toes. And I can't get them on my feet. They are way, way, way too small. And I did those nettle socks that I showed you on like my first podcast, that yarn that I got at Stephen and Penelope's. They were monkey socks, and I'm sure I used the same needle size, and the monkey socks are a 64 stitch sock because of the pattern. It's a 16 stitch repeat around the leg. So I cannot tell you why, but these monkey socks, I couldn't get them on. My friend Linda could barely get them on because I would have finished them for her. I mean, I don't even know anybody who these will fit. I know, and it's, you know, so it's, and the thing about knitting 2 at a time is look at all the knitting I did before I discovered I'm making them too small. You know, if I was only knitting 1, I would have only had to, you know, been knitting half this time. So that is a drawback about knitting 2 at a time. If you run into a problem, you've already got twice as much done as you would have if you were knitting 1 at a time. So there's a con in the, you know, when you're trying to figure out what you want to do. You can add that to the con side. But anyway, so I told my friend who is not a knitter, I'm putting these in timeout. She said, yeah, they should be thinking about what they've done. Yes, exactly. So anyway, and the thing is that I was knitting these at my parents' house. My mother's like, who are those socks for? And I said, oh, they're for me. She said, aren't they kind of small? Well, she says that every time. I go, oh, no, they stretch it. You know, don't you hate it when your mother's right? Ugh. Anyway, so these are way too small. And so I stopped knitting on them. You know, it was nice to have something that I can knit on without thinking about it when I was with Linda because, you know, she's not a knitter and it's bad, you know, I was going to say it's bad enough I'm knitting while we're talking, but she didn't mind. And, you know, it's not a bad thing to knit while you talk because you can knit and talk if you can knit and talk. And I could when I was making these. So I got quite a bit of work done. Well, you can see where the little hippopotamus was. I got the heels in. I got all the way up here. Oh, well. So I posted on Instagram that, you know, my disaster with these socks. And I think it was another Linda who's in the group suggested maybe charity knitting. But I don't know. It just seems like for charity knitting, you want something that's a little more easily cared for. I think. Maybe I'm just selfish and I don't want to give this yarn up. And because I already was thinking, rats, why am I making socks out of these when I got 2 skeins of it? And I love the yarn. So I'm thinking about frogging these socks. I had thought about buying a size 2 needle and doing them again because these are on 1s. And I thought, you know, if I just do the same thing in a 2, they should fit me. They were that much too small. I mean, then I was thinking, oh, I can make them into mitts. They're practically too tight on my arm. I don't know what happened. These are just, I don't know. They would be okay as mitts. They wouldn't be too tight as mitts. Actually, they'd be beautiful mitts. So I wonder if I could tear them back and do something with that. Anyway, I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I don't know. I had thought about mitts. I'm still thinking about those mitts because I think those would be, you know, it would be a cute pattern for a mitt, right? I don't know. Anyway, they're not going to be these socks, I can tell you that, because I can't get them on my feet, and I don't know anybody with a foot that small. I mean, I have nieces. I have a niece who's a sophomore in high school, but, you know, her feet are as big as mine. And so anyway, let me take the tea bag out of my tea. So ixnay on those socks, but it's too bad because I think they would have been squishy. I'm having tea. I was inspired by Nancy of the Round Rabbit. This tea, I'm having decaffeinated constant comment tea. It's a Bigelow tea. It's a spice tea that I like a lot. And so I have that. I have decaffeinated because I mostly drink my teas when I don't want caffeine. But this is my favorite mug, and I made this mug. I used to be a potter as a hobby. I used to take pottery classes and do stuff, and this is like the perfect size mug. The handle's got a little, whatever. It's not the perfect mug, but I really like the size of mug, and anyway, it's my favorite mug. I made it. But I watched Nancy, the Round Rabbits podcast, and she was showing a mug that she had glazed and liked, and I thought, oh, I should show my mug. I love my mug. So anyway, so the next thing I've been working on is, I went to my friend's house last Thursday, so I podcast at the end of the day on Monday and got that up, and that took all evening kind of. And so I had Tuesday. Wednesday, we were with our granddaughter, so either we were with her or I was exhausted. And then Thursday I left early in the morning. And I'm making, I'm making the shawl, but the shawl, the Walk in the Woods shawl, which I'll show in a second. But it's big and bulky. And I'm flying, they wanted to charge me $25 to check a bag. And I was only going for 5 days. So I thought I can do that in carry-on. Well, if you're doing that in carry-on, you can't be taking a 3-skein shawl project to knit on. So I didn't take my shawl with me to knit on, although I really love working on it. So I did make a lot of progress, and I'll show you that. But anyway, so I started a new project, and it helps me to do this podcast because I did mention on the podcast last week I haven't been doing anything for Christmas, so I decided to do something for Christmas. And I have a Christmas present that I want to make. It is fingerless mitts. Now, I have never made fingerless mitts before. Aren't these cute? These are my cup of tea mitts, and the pattern is a free pattern on Ravelry by Isabel Fluffy Fibers. And I believe that this is, yes, it says it's an adaptation of Robin Lynn's My Cup of Tea Socks, which is a free design on Ravelry. And so Isabel thought that this would be beautiful as mitts. And so she adapted the pattern with the permission of Robin Lynn and made it into fingerless mitts, which I am knitting as a Christmas present. So this isn't exactly a hoe because I just still have the thumb on waste yarn, but I have an almost hoe, and as a 2 at a time knitter, I don't generally have hoes because when I'm done with one, I'm done with both. Didn't this turn out nice? I am so thrilled with this mitt. And this mitt, and I have the second one, and I'm, I was knitting on the plane, and just as we're landing in Philadelphia, I'm getting to the spot where I have to put the thumb on waste yarn, so these are going to be done very shortly. And let me find the yarn. I guess I should have been a little more organized. I'm sorry. I did turn the pattern inside out so that that I could show the picture easily. This yarn is yarn that you saw a couple podcasts ago because I got this yarn at Rhinebeck. And this is the Cormo yarn by Sincere Sheep. It is 100% Cormo from the 9 Mile Ranch in Casey, Wyoming, it says. How fun is that? And it's a big, I guess it's a light fingering because there are 500 yards in 4 ounces. I guess 4 ounces is like 115 grams, right? And the color is called Prayer to Artemis. But I am loving knitting with this yarn. I wish I had bought more of it. It's just hand-dyed fibers and yarns using the finest natural dyes. The Terrar Fiber series from Sincere Sheep. And if I have an opportunity to buy more of this yarn, I definitely will because this is so much fun. And you can see how stretchy that yarn is. So as I'm knitting, it's looking really, really thin, but then it kind of puffs up. So I'm really interested to see what this does when I block it, when I wash it and block it and see what the yarn does, but it feels divine. And I have lots and lots, and I really am very close to being done. So I am definitely making myself a pair of these fingerless gloves too. And I was when I was standing in line in Rhinebeck, I was like, I wish I had feet, because my sister made me a pair years ago. So I do own some fingerless mitts, but not gloves, mitts. But I'm really, really, really enjoying knitting with this yarn. So if I ever have the opportunity to get more of it, I will do that. I can highly recommend it, and really, really lovely. And I love the pattern. I think it's just so sweet, and I'm really enjoying knitting it. And I cast this on so that I would have a second project, not just the socks, and boy, am I glad I did, on my trip. Because I couldn't take this huge thing. This is my Walk in the Woods shawl by Malia Designs, Maliha. And this I have really been enjoying knitting, I can tell you. And I spent Monday night, while I was working on the podcast stuff, and all day Tuesday working on this shawl. This is where I was when I podcast last time. So I haven't picked this up. Can you see that? Yeah, there it is. So this is what I've knit since then. And this is so squishy and wonderful and fun to knit. I've really been enjoying it. Really enjoying knitting this. And this is Magpie yarn. I also got this, I got this at the Indie Untangled event that was the day before Rhinebeck started. It was the Friday night. The blue is called Out of the Blue. Oops, sorry. The blue is called Out of the Blue. It doesn't seem to be focused. And the green is called Limelight. And I'm really, really having a good time knitting that, I have to say. Although I haven't knit on it since Tuesday, so I'm looking forward to working on it a little bit more. Although I'm psyched about the fingerless mitts. They're almost done. They're going really quickly, and I'm really, really enjoying. Oh, I should tell you about my bags. Well, it turns out that the bag I got from Nancy of Round Rabbit last week is the perfect size bag for a 3-skein project. And I needed a kind of biggish bag because it was going to be my main bag with a handle. So this is also my new one. I have some that aren't new that I'm using, but this is the one from the Crafty Toad podcast. The Toad Hollow NJ is the Etsy shop. And then my beloved bunny bag from Little Bobbins, which I always seem to put my socks in. But it doesn't really have a handle. And so the mitts and this bag fit into the Toad Hollow NJ bag. And that's what I took with me to Florida. And I had a great time in Florida. Beautiful weather. And I had never been to the Sarasota area. Those of you who may not be familiar with the geography of Florida or the United States even, Florida is one of our southernmost states and it's on the East Coast. So it's down there by the Caribbean and Cuba and down low there. And Sarasota is on the Gulf of Mexico side. And it's about 60 miles south of Tampa Bay, Tampa, if you want to look on a map. But it has some beautiful beaches, and we went. They have a beach called Siesta Key, beach, or Siesta Key is the island and the beach, and they do a drum circle on Sunday night. So we went Sunday night to watch the sunset and the drum circle, and I have a video of that. If I can figure out how to do that, you might have already seen it at the beginning of my, intro, and before I started. And if not, well, then I haven't figured out how to do that, and maybe I'll put it on Instagram. But anyway, so at the end of my last podcast, I was talking about my concerns about my stash. I seem to be buying a lot of yarn. And I said, well, I was only going to buy a couple more things this year because I had a couple Christmas presents that I needed to, that I was going to knit that I didn't have yarn for, and I was just going to buy those, and I wasn't going to buy any more online, although that's kind of heartbreaking because there's so many beautiful yarns online and indie dyers, and I do want to support indie dyers, but I have supported the indie dyers, so I can take a break from that and let other people support the indie dyers, I guess. But anyway, so, I was talking about how I wasn't going to buy any more yarn, and, and I don't know why I was saying that, because I knew I was going on vacation. And I love to buy yarn as a souvenir on vacation, and I knew about this yarn shop in Sarasota, so I bought yarn. The bottom line is I bought yarn. And I almost didn't tell you about the yarn because I mean, it's so silly, but I just went on and on at the end of my last podcast about how I'm not going to buy yarn, and I'm going to start, working on it, and and then I just buy yarn. I have no self-control, apparently. I have a little, I could have bought a lot more yarn. It was a beautiful shop. And it was the first time I had seen Quince & Co. in person, so that was kind of fun. And so I checked it out, but I didn't buy any. But this shop, the woman who owns the shop, the shop is called A Good Yarn Sarasota. I guess there is more than, there are other yarn shops called A Good Yarn. And so this is A Good Yarn Sarasota. And I'm kind of jealous of my friend who isn't even a knitter, because she lives very close to this yarn shop. And it is a beautiful yarn shop. They have all kinds they have Quince & Co., they have Madeline Tosh, but they also carry a bunch of, indie dyers, and apparently, and there was a local indie dyer who actually works there part-time. And lots of fun little tchotchkes and books, but lots and lots of beautiful, beautiful yarn. And the owner was lovely, and the women who worked there were lovely. And I even went back a second time. I went back yesterday to get one more skein, and I'll show you my yarn. And we had been in on Saturday, and there had been one person sitting there at a table knitting and talking to her friend. When we walked in on Monday, there were 6 or 8 people sitting around a table, and as soon as we walked in the door, it was, "Hi, how are you?" And so we started talking about, "What are you knitting?" Whatever. And they were so friendly. And I just thought, too bad my friend isn't a knitter. Maybe I can talk her into trying it out, because this is a lovely place with a very friendly group of knitters. And when we left, well, maybe you can stay longer next time. And it was really, and these were not people who worked there. The people who worked there were not Hovery. These were, the knitting group that apparently is there in the morning, on Monday morning. And I don't know if they're there at other times, but they were quite lovely and friendly, and it was really nice. And it's a wonderful local yarn shop. So she's lucky. So the husband of the woman who owns this shop, well, when I walked in, you walk into a yarn shop you've never been in, and they've got, shelves and shelves of yarn, and you just start looking. At least that's what I do. But, a woman came up and asked if she could help me, and I said, no, I was just looking, I'm on vacation, I wanted to buy some souvenir yarn, and she said, oh, well, our owner's husband is an undersea water photographer, and so he has these beautiful pictures, and she pointed out the pictures, and quite a few dyers have made yarn only for our shop, based on the pictures that her husband's done. And so we have these exclusive colorways of these yarns. And she took me to this little area where, you know, that had the colorways, and there were lots of them. But, you know, this is Florida. And so a lot of, you know, a lot of them were beachy, but they're beautiful colors. And so even though it's fall here in Pennsylvania and I'm getting a little urge for, you know, the warm, cozy colors, I bought some yarn. This one is called Squirrel Fish by Yarn Love, yarn.com. And I think the base is called Jane Austen because the colorway is definitely Squirrel Fish. And this is 84% superwash merino, 16% stellina. So it's got a lot of stellina in it. I hope it doesn't make it too itchy, but oh my gosh, it is so glittery. And I can imagine stellina has some strengthening properties if you were to make this into socks, I would imagine, but I don't know. It's 4 ounces, 370 yards. Does that make that a sport weight? I bet you this is a sport weight. I didn't even realize. But it is so, look at those colors. It is so beautiful. And look at this. I'm really tickled with it. So, and it's so sparkly. I had it, you know, I had to get it. I like the sparkle. So another colorway that I loved, and this is soft, squishy yarn. It's called Adorn Luxe, 85% merino, 15% nylon, and the colorway is called the Gulf of Mexico, which of course Sarasota is on the Gulf of Mexico. And I just loved. And this is 3 Irish girls. I have never had their yarn before or touched, you know, seen their yarn before. This is 3.5 ounces, which I think is 100 grams. And it's 430, I'm not getting a very good, there, maybe that is not too blurry. So anyway, I just thought this was beautiful, and it's so soft, and it was 85% merino, which I like for socks because, you know, it's warmer. And so I got another one for the giveaway. So the 100 subscriber giveaway, one of the prizes, well, one part of the prize, I think there's only going to be one prize, one winner, is a skein of this beautiful yarn from 3 Irish girls in the colorway Gulf of Mexico. Now, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, summer's coming, and so this is perfect. And if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, well, you know, come February, you might like a little Gulf of Mexico in your life just to brighten things up. So I hope you don't mind that I didn't buy something autumny, but I just thought this was a beautiful, beautiful color. And so this is in the giveaway. And they were so nice that I mentioned the giveaway, and the owners threw in for the winner of the giveaway a stitch marker that says, "A good yarn, Sarasota." Isn't that pretty? Just a little stitch marker with a little bead on it, and a little. And she gave that to me. They sell them, but I said I was going to get it for my giveaway. Oh, go ahead and take it. She was very sweet. So anyway, these 2 things are part of the giveaway. And and there's one more thing. I guess I might as well tell you what that is while we're on that subject before we get off of the subject. The other thing is I have made a set of stitch markers, and I had a yellow pad. There it is. That I thought would be a good it would be a good background if I put them in front of it. You can see a little bit of luster on the green. These are stitch markers that I made. These are the kind of swag that I gave at Rhinebeck. Well, actually, these are a little bit of a different design because I had made the loops much smaller on those, and I put them on a bulb pin because I had an idea that the stitch markers were better if the leaves were a little freer. But while I was in Rhinebeck, I saw stitch markers just like this. And so I thought I would try them. And I've been using them on my other ones, not these, on my mitts. And every time I get to it, it makes me smile. So, and it seems to work just fine. And one of these is a progress keeper. So it is on a lobster claw. So anyway, so that's the prize. It's stitch markers, one from A Good Yarn, and the other 5 stitch markers and a progress keeper from me, from my torch. And then this beautiful skein of 3 Irish Girls Gulf of Mexico yarn. So this is going to be the prize for our giveaway. And with all the, okay, so anyway, that was a little sidetrack because I bought the yarn for the giveaway, and I bought one for me and one for one of you. And the other yarn that I got was this. This is, I saw, and I cannot for the life of me remember who it was. I loved watching all the Rhinebeck episodes of all the podcasters and people showing what they got and everything. And somebody got something similar to this at Rhinebeck. It's Targhee. It's 70% Targhee and 30% unbleached Tussa silk. And it's hand-painted fiber. Single Silky Targhee is called. And she put, oh, it's Blue Moon Fiber Arts. She put the price tag over the name of the company, but it's Blue Moon Fiber Arts. And it is, they estimated, because I wasn't sure, it's probably a DK weight, maybe a little thicker. And it is 690, approximately 696 yards. And it is 265 grams. So it's 700, almost 700 yards. So, of Targhee and silk. So I bought 2 because I told you next year's the year of the sweater. So I wanted enough to make a sweater. And then I started thinking that, you know, for my size, 1,400 yards is just exactly right if it's, you know, pullover, you know, whatever. In fact, the owner of the shop had, someone is doing a knit along using this yarn, and she had the pattern up, and it was a pullover sweater, kind of a crew neck, and not super long, but it wasn't a short sweater. But 1,400 was exactly what they were saying I needed to. And if you went up a size, you would need 3. So I bought the 2 when we were there on Saturday. And then I thought about it and realized, you know, I'm kind of feeling like making big, you know, cardigan-y sweaters to keep me warm in the winter. And I have a few patterns that I'm interested in that actually have a hood. So I thought to give myself, and the yarn is wonderful, and to give myself more options, I thought I got a third. I got a third skein. So I have plenty of yarn. I can certainly make a sweater out of this. People don't usually talk about prices on these things. This was $32 a skein for 700 yards of Targhee and silk that feels like a dream. And I think this is a single, now that I'm looking at it. Single Silky Targhee. Yep, it's a single. So, I don't know if that means it might not hold up very well as a sweater. I don't know. Doesn't matter. We'll find out. But anyway, so it seemed like just an amazing price. You know, I thought that was a great price for how much yarn it is, and it feels wonderful. So I got the colorway Spicy Plum. And so that's what I bought. That's the yarn I bought in Sarasota. 3 of these. So, oops, I'm sorry about the crinkling. Switch, and I had carry-ons. I mean, I am not kidding. My plan was to wear all 3 of these skeins of yarn around my neck onto the plane. I was. But as it happened, I was able to jam it all in. But this was my plan. I thought I'd put the bag in my second carry-on bag, and when I got on the plane, I'd take it off and put it in the bag, because you only need to have those 2 bags. The only people who care about the 2 bags are the people who are checking you into the plane. Once you're in the plane, they don't care. Before you get to the plane, they don't care. You're in security. The security doesn't care. So, seriously, it was my plan to wear these skeins. But as it turned out, I was able to, they're so soft and smushy, I was actually able to jam them into my bag. So I didn't have to wear them, although I was a little sad. I thought, oh, what a great story. I had to wear these in the plane. But I was ready to, but I didn't have to. I bought a few little things, notion-y things too, which I don't have with me. But the other thing I bought was West Knits Best Knits. I want to make the exploration station. I already told you a million times I have the yarn for that. And I love the dotted rays. And I expect someday to make the dotted rays. And I love the aesthetic of this book. And how can you resist that cover? He's a crazy guy. So I bought it. I think I have to make 8 things out of this to make it pay. I mean, the book was $35. So, I paid a lot for each of my patterns. But he's got a lot of stuff in here, and one of them is brioche, which I want to learn how to do brioche, and maybe I'll start with my exploration station and go on from there. And he's got a bunch of other things, but guess what's in here? The doodler. So I own the doodler pattern if I want to make a doodler. Oh my gosh, it was so funny. After I finished my podcast last week, I was working on my shawl and watching podcasts, and I watched the Periscoping Sisters, and they were talking about Rhinebeck, and they were talking about Stephen West, and they were holding Kristen's yarn while they were in line with Miss Babs, so that Kristen or the Yarngasm podcast could run over and get her picture taken with Stephen West. And Debbie said, "But Amy, you didn't get your picture taken with Stephen West." And I'm paraphrasing here. You should go watch their podcast. I'm paraphrasing. She says, "What am I going to do? Go over and say, have a selfie with me, and I hate your doodler?" Amy Meeks doesn't like the doodler. I thought that was pretty, well, I burst out laughing. She said, so I didn't get my picture taken with him. Just after I was talking about the doodler and, people love the doodler. Not Amy Meeks. But I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, so lots of patterns. So I got this book as well. And so I'm all set when it's time for me to make my exploration station, or if I want to make the dotted rays. I haven't had much, well, you're probably pretty familiar with a lot of these patterns anyway. I haven't had a chance to read it too much, but it's got Exploration Station, Dotted Rays, the Doodler, Vertices Unite, which is a very interesting pattern, and I haven't really talked about it, but I bought Knit Stars, and I don't know if you're familiar with Knit Stars. It's a series of lectures and tutorials and conversations with 9 different people in the knitting world, including Stephen West. And it was Hannah Feddick, Stephen West, Romy Hill, the woman who does the knit collage yarn, the woman who is in charge of Koigu, and the dyer, Julie Asselin and her husband, they're Canadian. They went together in a thing, and there's another woman whose name I'm not remembering. Oh, and one of the women in charge of Pom Pom Magazine, whose name I'm not remembering. I'm very full of information. But anyway, if you go to Knit Stars, whatever, I mean, this was a big thing, and it was kind of a 2-week event. They had a new lesson every week starting, I think it was starting like October 10th. It was kind of pricey, to tell you the truth. And, you know, it was $200. And so, you know, I'm sitting there and there's 8 different people who have lots of different lessons, and I'm sitting there, you know, watching, and I'm, you know, in my mind thinking, well, was this worth $25 for each, you know, each of the people? If you cut in, you know, 8 different sections, you know, $25 a piece. And I wasn't always sure this exact thing I saw was worth $25, but it had, you know, some of it was for beginners, and, you know, I'm relatively new, but I'm not a beginner. I'm an advanced beginner, or a beginning advanced person, or, you know, intermediate. I'm a intermediate beginner, beginner intermediate, whatever. Anyway. So some of it, you know, I'm like, I'm not sure, but even the people who were telling me things that I felt like I really knew it, there was something in there that I didn't know that was really interesting to me. And it's like when I was working back in the old days, when I worked and I'd go to a conference and, you know, you'd spend $600, you know, and that was just the entrance fee to the conference. Then you had to fly there, and you had to have a hotel and all this stuff. And of course the company paid, I didn't pay. And sometimes you left with this one thing that you learned that was worth the $600. You know, I mean, you learn one thing in IT that saves you hours of time, or fixes this one problem that has been reoccurring and you haven't figured out how to fix it, or takes you down a new path that really opens up your mind to how you should be doing something. So, and this was a little bit the same. I mean, there were lots of little nuggets that were like, oh, I had no idea. And there are many things that I'm going to go back and watch again, and I haven't watched it all yet. But it was pretty interesting. Well, I'll take better notes, you know, and talk about it a little more. Did you know that there was a long tail purl stitch cast on? I didn't know that. So that when you're doing a long tail, you can do a knit and a purl. There's a way to do a long tail purl cast on. I didn't even know that. But I don't know a lot of things, so you may all be sitting there, Barb, I can't believe you didn't know that. Well, I didn't know that, but now I do, and I know how to do it. And if I don't remember it, which I don't, I can go back and look. But anyway, Stephen West is one of the people on Knit Stars, and that's how I got onto this. And this shawl, the Vertices Unite shawl, is one of the things he talks about how he does this, because these are all knit different directions, and you pick up here and you do that and this, you know. So I was pretty excited to get this pattern, although for all I know I got it with my Knit Stars, because patterns did come with it, so it's possible I got that in there. But anyway, you know, so there was, you know, he has some instructions on how to do that. But yeah, there's all kinds of great shapes and things like that. So anyway, so I bought this, and now I'm the proud owner of a copy of the Doodler pattern if I want to make a Doodler. I'll be surprised if I make a Doodler, although it does look like it's fun. But anyway, so that is what I got in my vacation shopping, which I love to do vacation shopping. And for yarn, I like to have souvenirs as yarn. So that's why I'm surprised. Oops, I'm sorry. I think I'm wiggling my camera. I'm sorry. Earthquake. Surprised at myself that I didn't, you know, throw in that caveat when I was talking about how I wasn't going to buy yarn. So I'm not going to talk about not buying yarn anymore, because clearly I'm going to be buying some yarn. But I do want to start paying attention to my stash. And I did mention at the end of my last podcast that Xena of the Little Yellow Uke this past year has been tracking her stash. I mean, her goal was to be stash neutral for the year. In other words, that she would knit up and get rid of as much yarn as she bought. And given how much yarn I already have, being stash neutral, means I have a lot of yarn. And so I've decided that I'm going to do this. Same thing. And rather than wait till the beginning of the year, I mean, often, you have this artificial, when the new year starts, I'm not waiting. I'm starting right now. So I counted up all the yarn that I bought. And this includes the giveaway yarn, because I have it. It's mine until it's yours. But once I gift it to the winner of the giveaway, then it goes out of my stash. And that's a legitimate out. Destashing, gifting, that kind of thing, all counts. But anyway, so my haul from A Good Yarn Sarasota, which is a beautiful shop, was 1,105 grams. And I'm going to do grams just as Zena does, because it's a lot easier to figure out the out if you do grams. You just weigh your final pieces. Or if you're giving away, you're doing it in exchange, or you're doing, a mini exchange or something like that, you can just weigh the minis. This is how many grams went out of my stash. So anyway, I'm going to set up a spreadsheet. I wrote it down on my paper, and it's 1,105 in. But when I finish my shawl and when I finish my mitts, those will be out. And they count as out, just like these count as in. Oh, I keep wiggling you. I'm so sorry. And I'm starting now. I'm not going to wait till the beginning of the year. And I think it's going to be a little bit like when I'm on a weight loss diet. I don't do that anymore, but I did a lot. I'm a former Weight Watchers leader. I know all about dieting. Used to be my hobby, I think. But anyway, one of the things that Weight Watchers has you do, and a lot of other things, and especially, there are apps now, and keep track of what you eat. And keeping track of what you eat really helps you sometimes not to eat. I mean, there were many times when I thought, I don't want to eat this because I don't want to write it down in my journal. And so I suspect there will be times when I'm tempted to buy yarn, and I'll say to myself, I don't want to put it in my spreadsheet. I'm not going to buy this yarn. So I think it will help a little bit. And anyway, it'll just keep track. And, keeping track helps you understand yourself anyway, and, figure out exactly what's going on with you. And so that's my plan for my stash, and I'm going to stop moaning and groaning. I can't believe I bought it. I got to stop buying. I'm running out of money. I'm going to stop doing that, because I'm boring myself. You guys must be bored to tears. But I am going to be paying attention to what I have in my stash and what I'm doing in my stash. And so I'm starting today. And when I work, after I, start putting this podcast up, and I put up the show notes, and I'm going to start a thread in the Ravelry group. And if any of you want to join in your version, I mean, if you want to do what I'm doing what Zena did, which is essentially keep track of what's going in and what's going out, with the idea that as close to neutral as possible would be good. I feel like that would be good. And so if that's what you would like to do and join, that's great. If you have some other thing that you're doing and would like to, talk about it and join the group, join the thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to edit my thread every week with my new total of yarn, whatever that may be, and stay on top of it that way. Because, I just want to keep track of it, and I want to stop whining about, I got to stop buying yarn, I got to stop buying yarn. It's like, enough already with that. I'm getting tired of hearing myself. And I was wrong last week when I said I'm not expecting any yarn in the mail. I totally forgot, and I don't know how I forgot this. I signed up for Legacy Fiber Arts. Sue and Chelsea from Legacy Knits, they're doing yarn. They are doing a Christmas Advent yarn thing, 24 days of yarn, and it's going to be 24 different minis, and I think maybe the 24th is a full skein of yarn or something. It's that they're doing. So I'm very excited. I don't have any of their yarn, but I had signed up before last week, and I should have mentioned that because it totally went out of my mind. So I'm looking forward to that. That should be fun, and that will, should satisfy all my needs for getting yarn in the mail. And but I will have to put it in my spreadsheet as yarn in. So, but I'm hoping that doing my Christmas presents and things, although I don't have any big present this year that's going to take up lots of yarn. But I'm going to do sweaters. I have lots of sweater quantities. I have one new sweater quantity. And I'm feeling like I want to do some sweaters and some stuff. So anyway, but we don't do a lot of Christmas present exchanges in my family. I exchange with my kids, and my husband and I don't exchange. I don't exchange with my parents, although I shouldn't say this because my mother might watch, but she's got something coming. But I won't get anything from them, which is fine. I don't need anything. But anyway, but it is nice to get a little something for Christmas. So I'm looking forward to that. That should be fun. So anyway, so that's what I've acquired, and that's my plan for my stash management. And if I can end up being a little negative, after a while, that would be nice. But I am going to try not to shop too much on the internet for yarn. But I'm going to Vogue Knitting Live in January. I'm sure I'm going to be buying yarn there. I have to go to my local yarn shop to look for some stuff, at least a couple skeins for some Christmas presents that I don't have the yarn for. And I'm going to go to Maryland Sheep and Wool, and I'm going to buy yarn there. So I'm going to be buying yarn. I'm just, trying to keep track, make sure that I'm happy with how it's going. I mean, that's really what I'm trying to do, because I love my yarn. I enjoy my stash. I enjoy shopping in my stash when I want to make something, when I pick a pattern. So anyway, the last thing I wanted to do is talk a little bit about a couple podcasts. I had meant to do this last week and forgot, so I will tell you about my podcast that I was talking about last week. I was going to talk about last week and then forgot. The first one is The Cat Lady. This is a woman that I met. Her name is Andrea. I met her at Rhinebeck at the Podcasters Meetup, and I wasn't familiar with her podcast. She is from Michigan. I'm pretty sure Michigan, and I really enjoy her podcast. It's C-A-T-T, the C-A-T-T lady. She craft all the things, but she also has cats, so it's a little play on words. But she is a really lovely woman, and, she's got this sort of dry sense of humor. I love her sort of matter-of-fact manner, and I wish we were neighbors. I think that would be so much fun to go and sit and knit and have a, cup of coffee with her every once in a while in the morning when she wanted to take a break. She's got kids, and, she's younger than me. Everybody's younger than me. But she just seems like a lovely woman, and I really enjoy her podcast. I really enjoy her sort of sense of humor, kind of dry, and I don't know. I highly recommend her podcast. I really enjoyed it, and it's on my list of podcasters to watch. And then you probably already heard of her, but the Yarn Hoarder has started a podcast. She's got 2 or 3 episodes now, and I had never heard of her before, but I guess she's been very active in the knitting community and on Instagram, and lots of people knew her before she started podcasting. So her podcast took off right away because a lot of people knew her from the community. Her name is Amber, and her podcast is really, it's lively. She's lively and sweet. And I'm sitting in front of my stash here. She sits in front of the most amazing wall of yarn in her craft room. I mean, Yarn Hoarder, she didn't pick that name out of a hat. She has an amazing wall of yarn and gorgeous, gorgeous yarns. But she also is apparently in the middle of knitting 20 pairs of socks. And, as soon as she's, something happens, she casts on a new pair of socks. And she's got a lot of one socks. And anyway, she's funny and she's lively and she's sweet. And I just enjoyed her podcast. And I think a lot of people are going to love watching that podcast because they can look at her stash and say, see, somebody has more stash than me. See, she's happy and she has a lot of works in progress. She doesn't care that, it's okay to cast on a new sock. Just because you have 14 other socks started doesn't mean you can't cast on your sock. So I think that, she will be a big help to the knitting community to help us, rethink what we think of as too much yarn, too many whips, too much whatever. And her first episode, the other thing that I found kind of charming and I understood completely was she was finishing up her Rhinebeck sweater. I guess she finished this podcast, posted it, turned off her phone and went to Rhinebeck. And so she didn't know how it was going or anything. And you can watch her second episode or she has actually a little Rhinebeck episode and how she was feeling about that. But in her first episode, she was talking about making her Rhinebeck sweater. And basically she just finally convinced herself that she should just knit a sweater the size of her body. And, I understand that completely. It's like, I don't want, it took a long time for me to make a sweater. I don't want to make a sweater this size. I'm trying to be skinnier, or whatever. I don't know if that's what she was trying to do, but she finally just accepted that she wanted a sweater and she was going to make a sweater for the body she had. And I really love that. It's really important for us to accept ourselves, I think. Which is not to say we shouldn't do things to make ourselves healthier. But, accepting your body the way it is. I mean, I can remember when I was younger, I didn't go swimming for years. It was like, I'll swim when I lose some weight. I'm not putting a bathing suit. I'm never, if I did that, if I kept with that, I would never swim again, So it's like, you gotta live your life the way you are. It's not to say you shouldn't be trying to improve your health or whatever, but so I really like that. I could really empathize with that. And anyway, she's kind of, accepting herself as she is. And she certainly accepts her stash and like if I want to start a new sock, I'm starting a new sock. My hobby. I'm loving it, So anyway, The Yarn Hoarder with Amber. So those are my two podcasts that I've started watching recently, and I found a couple other ones which I will tell you about next week in my next podcast, which will probably be back on. I'll probably be back to Mondays in case anybody noticed I wasn't here last night. So anyway, I think that's everything that I'm going to talk about today. The giveaway. I forgot that part. So. I'm going to put a thread in the group and in the Flame and Fiber podcast group forums on Ravelry. And if you have any interest in this beautiful Three Irish Girls yarn and you know what? I could go out in the studio and make some stitch markers that match this yarn better. I might do that. So it may not be these exact stitch markers. I don't know if you care. And this cute little stitch marker from A Good Yarn in Sarasota, Florida. So if you would like to enter a drawing for the 100 subscriber giveaway on the Flame and Fiber podcast, I will put up a thread with a prompt, and well, since stash management is a little bit the theme of this podcast, and I'm not going to make it the theme of every podcast because, oh my gosh, I can't stand the thought of that. But anyway, but I will talk about where I am. I mean, I'll give you an update, but I'm not going to go on and on about it anymore. But anyway, if you have a method of managing your stash, and, you know, or ideas about how you, even ideas about how you stay happy with your stash, even if it seems like a lot of stash, but, you know, doesn't bother you. Or, well, I obviously didn't formulate this very well because I'm not exactly sure, but it'll all be about stash, and about how you manage your stash and how you feel about it and what you do to control your stash, and is it a problem for you or not. Anyway, it's going to be about stash. I'll put it in. I'll figure it out while I'm uploading this podcast, and I would love to. Send this beautiful yarn to you if you would like it, and the stitch markers. And so anyway, so look for that thread in the Flame and Fiber group, podcast group. You need to be a subscriber of the podcast and a member of the group in Ravelry. And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure I can know if you're a subscriber. So, you know, if you're not a subscriber, you probably could still win, because I get told some subscribers, but not all of them. So I won't know if you're a subscriber. That's true. But I will know if you're in the Ravelry group. So if you're in the Ravelry group, you're eligible, and I'd love to hear from you. And I will draw for that in 2 weeks. I think I'll give it 2 weeks because, oh, excuse me. Because I have an hour-long podcast once a week. It's a lot, so people may not, may not get to it. So 2 weeks, and then so I will close the thread right before I podcast, not next time, but the time after that, which will be probably 2 Mondays from now, the second Monday from now. So anyway, that's it. And I'll say goodbye now because I've been talking a lot. And so I hope you have time this week to do some crafting that you love and makes you happy. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye.